Who fails? No one can heal me when we talk.
Excuse me, I said, in space, no one can hear you retreat, or advance, or give any orders at all, because sound is a wave which requires a medium to travel in, and space, as we all know, is a vacuum. This is one of the many things we'll find out today, possibly, in Galactic Empire, the next game we're looking at from Creating Political and Military Simulation Games on your Micro by Mike Rose. Because I am Space Admiral Snorkers, ready to bring peace and prosperity to the galaxy, no matter who stands in my way. So, we're a small galactic empire up against a bigger one. They've got more ships than us, but we've got cunning, and we've got skill, and hopefully we've got a bit of luck. So, are you ready? Lock phasers! Fire torpedoes! Orbital bombardment for the win! Galactic Empire. You are the Admiral of the Space Fleet of an expanding Galactic Empire. It currently owns 40% of the galaxy. Using military strategy and political acumen, you must beat back the forces of another, larger empire, while taking care not to alarm planets of the frontier regions of your militaristic intentions. When a territory is occupied, be sure to allocate enough ships to guard against nationalist elements amongst the populace. Press any key to continue. So this is the game mostly as typed in. I changed General to Admiral. So 3 options. We can do nothing. Order a sit rep from a quadrant. We choose from system 1, 2, 3 or 4. We have 43 ships here. Enemy has 56 ships. And the front is 3 spaces from our home planet. We have to transfer ships. 1 to 4, from which quadrant? Number 5, how many ships? Let's say 20. So 4 quadrants, 5 as reserve. I'll add a small bit of colour here. The interesting feature in this game is transport is not immediate. So if you transfer ships now, they won't reach there until the next turn. So on quadrant 3, we've got 68 ships. Enemy has 1 ship. We are fairly happy. They're rebellious. So I'm going to move some ships around. I'm not quite sure what I'm doing. Essentially, when you're happy, you say do nothing, and I'll then proceed to the next stage. Finally, moving some ships to quadrant 4, 20 ships from the reserve. So in reserve, we have 940 ships. The enemy has 832. So now we do nothing. Quadrant 1, we lost 43 ships. Enemy lost 8. We lost the system. The front's now 2 ships there. We did 1 in quadrant 2 though. Captured the ship. We quarantine it with 20. The next system outward has rebelled and has joined me, which is very nice. However, on quadrant 3, we lost the system. They're now 2 systems away. There's been a rebellion. Unfortunately, the rebellion has been crushed, which is a shame. Again, in quadrant 4, we've lost the system. They're 2 spaces away. We've built 211 new ships. The enemy has built 268 or so. Let's now transfer ships to quadrant 3 from the reserve. Let's say 300 ships. Instead of 100, sorry. Let's now transfer ships to quadrant 4, which is getting too close. From the reserve, 150 ships. So quadrant 2, we are massively outnumbered in quadrant 1. They've got 238 ships to us, and we've only got 20. So let's transfer ships. We've got loads of ships in reserve though, so let's use them. So from the reserve, how many ships? Let's try that again. Transfer ships to quadrant number 1 from the reserves, 450 ships. And let's check out quadrant 2. We've got more ships and we're doing pretty well. Quadrant 3, we've got 2 ships, they've got over 200, so let's send some ships to quadrant 3 from our reserves. They won't get there until next turn, and let's now proceed. And we lost the system in quadrant 1 because our ships haven't got there yet. This is a bad thing. Again in quadrant 2, we lost the systems, they pushed us back slightly. Quadrant 3, we've lost the system again, they're only 1 system away, and again in quadrant 4. This is not going well. We've got 121 new ships, the enemy's got 90. So we've now got lots of ships in Quadrant 1, which is nice. In Quadrant 2, we haven't got enough ships. In Quadrant 3, we have 550 ships. Everyone's pretty happy. We outnumber them 2 to 1. And in Quadrant 4, we haven't got enough ships, and they're too close for comfort. And we have 150 ships in reserve. So I'm going to send ships into Quadrant 4 from the reserves, 150 of them. And let's see what happens. So we've captured a system in Quadrant number 1. Let's leave 20 ships to garrison it. We've now lost the system again in Quadrant 2. We've captured the system in Quadrant 3 though, which is nice. Let's leave 20 ships behind. And there's been a rebellion. We've pushed forward. In Quadrant 4 though, we've lost the system, and the enemy fleet in Quadrant 4 has reached our planet and conquered it. We're sent into exile in the planet of the Brainworms. So that game was interesting enough. I think we can make some improvements to it though, like we normally do. Add some special effects, add some bit of magic, add some tweaks to the gameplay, and then we can see if we can make it better. So let's have a look at Galactic Empire version 3.0. If you're going to be using Galactic Empire version 3.0 to add all kinds of new fun stuff, you're going to use bits of code you've used before, and if you're playing that kind of game, you need to be using a utility such as ZX blocks. You can do things without it, I have been in the past, but this makes things a lot easier, because what you're trying to do is marshal up various pieces of code on a virtual tape. So what we have here is setn.4, which long-time viewers will realise that I'm using a font from Char-Bank from Roberto Colombo. And font N4 is a sci-fi font. So I've now replaced the standard Spectrum Sinclair font with something a bit more suitable. So you can see there, it's all quite nice and sci-fi-y. I'm now loading a machine code thing called Milky Way. Loaded that, that's quite short. Now loading some scroll code, which will be obviously used for scrolling. The Milky Way code. So the scroll code comes from John Hardman and Andrew Houston's book, Best Machine Codes for the Spectrum. The Milky Way code is found on Spectrum Computing. The link will be in the description below. Zappo is by E French of Lancaster. I typed it in on stream and it's rather nice. I'm now loading the actual main program itself, Galactic Empire V3. I could have loaded all the bytes from within Galactic Empire V3, but that meant whenever you ran it, you would have to keep reloading the tape, which would get rather tiresome. This way, I load all the machine code parts first, and can then keep rerunning the program and getting on with it, really. So 4 bits of machine code, a new font, Milky Way, scroll code, and Zappo. All of which will add a bit of pizzazz to the game. I've also made some changes to how the gameplay itself works, which we'll look at that when we get to it. Screen goes black, always nicer. Galactic Empire. You are the admiral of a space fleet of an expanding galactic empire seeking to bring peace and order to the galaxy. Currently, 40% of the galaxy is blessed by its enlightened rule. Sadly, there are people outside of your empire, living lives without the protection of your heroic space navy. Using military strategy and political acumen, you must beat back the forces of another, larger empire, while taking care not to alarm planets of the frontier regions of your militaristic intentions. When a territory is occupied, be sure to allocate enough ships to guard against rebellion from nationalist elements amongst the populace. Welcome to the dawning of a new empire. Good luck, Admiral. This is the scrolling code. Print at the bottom of the screen, black ink, black paper, scroll it up, it appears pixel at a time. Added a little bit of magic. The Milky Way gives us a nice scrolling star field, going through the same thing we have here. So you've got a nice scrolling star field, which is all driven by interrupts. You have to be very careful though with clearing the screen, so I now no longer clear the screen, but in fact print space into the screen. The next change I made was basically it's cosmetic as well. Rather than fronts 1, 2, 3, 4, I gave each front a name based on a constellation: Aquila, Draco, Eridani, and Taurus. And then each system within that I gave a name as well. So now we've taken the Petra system, and the next system, Aquila, Tarazed, has rebelled against me, which is nice. We're now fighting in Xin Fu. In the original game, we've taken the Funi system. How many ships occupied the system? In the original game, these ships had no effect on the game whatsoever. In my new version, what we now do is by applying ships to garrison, you actually increase your popularity into the system, which is nice. Popularity was based in an array of P of two sorts. Your own popularity was reported as number 1. In fact, popularity number 2 was the enemy's popularity, and it was the only one that made any effect. So that wasn't really ideal. So let's see here, going forward, moving things around. The actual moving ships around was fine. Building ships here, what originally happened was you got built between 1 and 500 ships. The enemy built between 1 and 400. See, the stars are now scrolling downwards. And that was entirely random. What we now have is something similar, except it's you build between 1 and 50 ships, the enemy between 1 and 25, but also you get one go at building ships for each system you control. So the further forward your front is, the better, which is nice. I think that's rather better. We have lots of ships here. I've also added sound effects. These are the Zappo sound effects. So here I'm transferring ships. Look at the Taurus front, very, very fast, flying through. Transferring ships to... see here now, before, when we transferred ships, we had to remember how many ships we had. We've now lost the Tarazed system. It's bad. But we're 6 systems away, still fighting in Xin Fu. I got these star names. We've taken the Thuban system. Let's apply 30 ships. And we're now fighting in Rastaban, which is nice. We've lost Angatanar, now fighting in Akanar. I think stars have nice names. One thing you'll note, whenever we have a sound effect, the border of the screen goes white. When you issue beeps in machine code, you do this by doing an out command to channel 254. And bits 0, 1 and 2 control the border size. And the machine code just sets all those to white and hopes for the best. One thing I made to improve the UI was when you do a transfer, we tell you how many ships there are in the target and also the source. So it's a bit more convenient. We have loads of ships on front number 2. Again, front number 3, our side's rebellious, because originally if you had more ships than the enemy, you get more popular rather than less. So I fixed that as well. So some of these bugs were very, very minor. Some were just slight tuning. The whole garrison thing being a complete waste of time wasn't great. So now we're doing pretty well here. Loads of ships in reserve, and we're sending 55 more ships to the Draco front. Now looking at Eridani, more ships there, flying through. Every year I changed it. Oh, we've taken the Xin Fu system, occupied it with 30 ships. We're now fighting in Tarazed. We've captured Rastaban. Now fighting in Al-Ruba. The names make no difference. It's just a series of fighting in Akanar. It's a series of arrays of strings and arrays of string lengths, so it all works nice and tidy. Zarak has rebelled. We've taken Alcyon. So what we have a zapping sound effect, and we have an explosion sound effect when we lose the system. We also have a machine gun sound effect, which we have when we lose. We've now built 846 new vessels. The scrolling of the stars took the most effort because it kept crashing horribly. If you do the scrolling while we're doing the Star Wars opening text crawl, it'll crash your spectrum. If you do it while clearing the screen, it might crash your spectrum. So it's very, very pernickety, but it's a really rather lovely effect. I think improvingly just telling you how many ships you've got, so you don't have to remember. taken Tarazed. There's 100 ships to garrison it. We're now fighting in Chi-Aquilae, because we're in the Aquila constellation. These are all based on stars in a constellation, distance going further from Earth. We've taken Alruba, 100 ships, and now fighting in Shao Wei, and the Tianyi system has joined us. It's all go. We've captured the Zaurak system, fighting in Muhun. And the Hogar system has been captured as well, fighting in the 36 Tauri. The fleet on the Draco front has taken the enemy's home planet in Galactic Standard Year 12. Nothing now prevents you from extending your enlightened rule to bring peace and prosperity to the entire galaxy. Do you want another game? This is to show what happens if you lose. Condemned to death military firing squad and executed thanks to Zappo. Here you've seen a basic program with an interesting premise spruced up with the addition of colours, a starfield, a Star Wars style introduction and sound effects. There were some tweaks to be made to the gameplay too, but overall I'm pleased with this one. Well done Mike Rose, and thanks to E French, Neil Hopkinson, John Hardman, Andrew Hewson and Roberto Colombo for the lovely additions. Thank you for watching.